Welcome to English Listening Practice. This video is designed for learners of all levels. Listen carefully and try to understand the story. Let's begin. In the Maritime Museum of Kotor, the air always smelled faintly of salt and varnish, as if the building itself had been sealed with old voyages. I had been hired to modernize the exhibits. New lighting, new captions, a sleek audio guide that could turn a dusty compass into a hero's relic. For 3 months, I told myself I was doing honest work, translating history into something people could feel. Then the director called me into his office and closed the door with unnecessary care. "Leah," he said, sliding a folder across his desk, "we have an opportunity." The folder held photographs of a brass astrolabe, its surface engraved with delicate stars and Arabic script. Beautiful, undeniably. Beneath the photos, a draft label. Astrolabe used by Captain Vukovic during the 1692 blockade. A bold claim, the kind that would make headlines and attract donors who liked their culture served with certainty. I had read enough inventory ledgers to know our evidence rarely deserved italics. "This hasn't been authenticated," I said. "It's being loaned," he replied, as if that were the same thing. "From a private collection. The owner wants a feature in our summer gala. We need a story. People don't donate to footnotes." He watched my face for signs of obedience, not conviction. I felt the familiar tightening behind my ribs, the sensation I'd mistaken for ambition when I was younger. I had come back to Kotor after years abroad, after the scholarship, the conferences, the polite praise that never quite became a permanent position. This job was my second chance, the sort people say you must protect fiercely, as if your livelihood is a candle in a drafty church. "Write the label," he said. "Make it sing. We'll add 'believe to have' if you insist, but not so much that it scares them away." On my way out, I passed the glass cases of the permanent collection. A sailor's diary, its pages swollen from damp. A child's shoe recovered from a shipwreck. Objects that didn't need exaggeration because their silence already carried weight. I wondered when we had decided that truth was only valuable if it was profitable. That evening, I met my father for coffee on the square. He had worked at the docks until his back gave out, and he carried his tiredness like a private weather system. He listened as I explained the astrolabe, the director's expectations, my unease. My father stirred sugar into his cup, though he never drank it sweet. "When I was your age," he said, "I signed papers I didn't understand because everyone else signed them. The foreman said, 'If you don't, someone else will.' I thought I was being practical. And later, when someone got hurt, I remembered my signature more clearly than my own name." He looked up, his eyes steady. "You're not responsible for the whole museum, but you are responsible for your own hands." The next morning, I opened the folder again. The provenance documents were thin. A typed note from the owner's family archive, a blurred photograph of the astrolabe on a velvet cloth. No chain of custody, no independent appraisal. Enough to persuade someone who wanted to be persuaded. I could do what the director asked, and still tell myself I had added small caveats. I could also refuse and risk being labeled difficult, which in institutions like ours was a polite form of exile. The worst part wasn't fear of losing the job. It was fear of returning to the version of myself who was always waiting, always grateful, always careful not to take up too much space. At noon, I met the owner, an impeccably dressed woman named Marija, who arrived with a lawyer and the kind of smile that had never been denied. She spoke warmly about preserving heritage, about giving back, about how her grandfather had saved the astrolabe during chaotic times. Every sentence was varnished. Nothing could be pinned down. When she left, she pressed her card into my hand. "I'm so glad the museum finally has someone with vision," she said, and the compliment felt like a bribe wrapped in silk. In the exhibition hall, the empty pedestal waited under a spotlight, like a stage for a confession. I sat at my desk and began to write 2 versions of the label. The first was what they wanted. Heroic, definitive, irresistible. It made the astrolabe a witness to famous men and glorious nights at sea. It also made me complicit. The second told the truth, that the object was remarkable regardless of whose hands had held it, that its origins were under review, that history was often an argument between what we wish and what we can prove. It wasn't a story that sang, it was a story that breathed. I printed the second label and walked to the director's office. My palms were damp, as if my body had decided to dramatize my principles. He read it in silence. When he reached the line, "Attribution remains unverified," his jaw tightened. This is timid, he said. This is how you lose donors. It's also how you keep your integrity, I replied, surprised by the steadiness of my voice. If we're selling certainty we don't have, we're not a museum, we're a theater. He leaned back, eyes narrowing, calculating. You know what this could cost us? I know what it could cost me if I don't, I said, and for the first time, I understood that my career wasn't the only thing at stake. My identity was, too. The quiet agreement I made with myself each time I chose comfort over honesty. For a long moment, the office clock did all the talking. Finally, he exhaled. We'll compromise, he said, as if the truth were a negotiable asset. But if the gala goes poorly, it won't, I interrupted. Not because the label is safer. Because people are smarter than we think. And because even if they aren't, we should act like they are. He didn't thank me. He didn't need to. When I left his office, the museum corridor looked the same, but my footsteps sounded different. Less like someone tiptoeing through borrowed space, more like someone who had decided to stand where she stood. That night, I walked past the bay, where the water held the city lights in trembling fragments. I thought about the astrolabe, a tool designed to find one's position by reading the sky. For years, I had used ambition as my compass, assuming it would lead me somewhere solid. But ambition, I realized, can be a foggy horizon. You move, you strive, and still you might end up lost. The next day, I watched visitors stop at the new case. Some read quickly, some lingered. A teenager traced the diagram on the glass with her finger, then looked up at the ceiling, as if she could imagine the stars. No one complained that the label wasn't dramatic enough. No one demanded a hero. And in that small, ordinary quiet, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not triumph, but relief. The kind that comes when you stop performing and start telling the truth, even when it costs you the easiest version of your future. Thank you for listening and practicing English with us. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. See you in the next video.